Hello, it's Big Chad, and this is the Trading Encyclopedia Daily Education series on my YouTube at Chad's Trading. You can find me on Twitter at Big Chads and Bitcoin Live, where I am a founding analyst. For today's lesson, we're going to talk about an apex. You've heard me use the term, what is an apex? It really refers to the decision point of a triangle, and normally a symmetrical triangle, but it can also be in other patterns like descending or ascending triangle, or even a pennant, and I'll show you that on a chart. But here's just an example, right? We have a symmetrical triangle, and the apex is kind of the end, the decision point. Now, one important thing to keep in mind, this pattern especially is only really valid through 2/3 of it, right? We see here 50 to 75%. I said 2/3. The idea is when you get to the end, I'll show you what I mean. So when you get the end of a symmetrical triangle, and by the way, symmetrical triangles are normally continuation patterns, and they, depending on the trend. So if it's an advancement into an ascending, into a symmetrical triangle, it's likely to continue. Now you form your boundaries. At this point here, it should probably break out, because when you get this close to the apex, right? That's the apex. You get all these false breakouts. So breakouts are not as valid this close to the apex. The apex meaning the end or the decision point. These patterns should resolve before they get to the end of that tightening range, because again, you're going to get all these fake outs. When it's this tight, of course you're going to break one of these trend lines, right? You take, for example, an ascending triangle. When it gets this, when it's here to this point, there's no purpose. You're not going to gain any value or any alpha on the break, of either of the upper boundary or the rising boundary, right? All these patterns, you'd like to see them complete really generally within 2/3. It said 50 to 75% of the consolidation. But the idea of the apex is very simply, regardless of whether or not you have an ascending, a descending triangle, it's that decision point right at the end when the breakouts become less valid, but you're about to make a move. You're very close to making a move. You're normally just past the usefulness of normal technique, normally using the boundaries, but even still, it is time to go. It is time to move. You gotta do it or get off the pot. I mean, you are there, right? It is the decision point. That is the apex. And it says here an important point, as I said, the reliability warning, because trading closer, even past the apex, is the energy is dissipated. And that's the idea of a coil generally meaning a symmetrical triangle, tiny range. These generally will continue, and here's your coil. And again, you'd want to break out like here, and you can continue from there. But when you get this close, it's of limited usefulness. That is the apex. And this is the Trading Encyclopedia Daily Education series on my YouTube at Chad's Trading. Find me on Twitter at Big Chads and Bitcoin Live, where I'm a founding analyst. Folks, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon. Big Chad's out.